thing called tuna sashimi? 3, 2, 1.
Hello, Toon here. This time I got a hardware review on the Sega Dreamcast. Just a brief little bit of history. The Sega Dreamcast came out in Japan November 27th, 1998. Apparently it didn't get that much. Well, people weren't overly fussed on it, you know what I mean? It wasn't that well renowned. But a year later it came out in America, and in October 14th, 1999 it came out in Europe. I remember that day they came out because I remember picking mine up on the day it came out with a few games, and I'm thinking, wow, what a cool machine. You know, I love the Dreamcast and I still love it now, and that original launch machine I've still got and still works perfectly fine. So, well, a bit more on the hardware. Anyway, yeah, the Sega Saturn was a bit unsuccessful, perhaps not so much in Japan but here. So Sega decided to make the Dreamcast. It was called originally Project Katana, but they changed it to Dreamcast. Apparently the Sega went to use off-the-shelf components for it to save on price, to get the machine out cheaper, which they did. And it came out sort of roughly just before the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox and all that. Unfortunately, it didn't have a very long life. In 2001, in March 31st, it was discontinued, and Sega themselves jumped out of the console business and started to become a third-party publisher and developer, which they've been doing quite well over the years, and they're still going now. Shame they're not making another console. What can I say about the Dreamcast? Classic console, pretty cool looking, quite heavy, quite chunky. Had some fantastic games on them. I'll go into a few of them later, but a really cool console. And I really rate the Dreamcast. So anyway, we'll have a look on the machine. As you see on the front, I don't know if you can see that, it's got Windows CE operating system. This was a deal that Sega did with Microsoft. Part of that deal was apparently the first 5 Sega games to come out on the machine had to be programmed with Windows CE. This is why things like Sega Rally 2, and I can't remember the other games that came out. Virtua Fighter 3 is one of them. That they were good, but they weren't as good as they could have been on this machine. That's because they had to use Windows CE, which is a shame because they should have done a version of it after. But anyway, as you notice, it comes with 4 controller points at the front. Well, Andy playing multiplayer, and there's quite a lot of multiplayer games. On top of the machine, it's round. It's got the blue Sega logo. This is a European model. Open it up, standard CD tray, that type of thing. On the back by here, you notice is a modem. Yes, this console was online. This modem can be removed, as you see. This was an online console. There was quite a lot of online games, and I played quite a few of them at the time using dial-up. This is a dial-up modem. It is possible to use a broadband modem with this, with a bit of hacking. And there's still websites and servers up for the broadband games, and you can play things like Phantasy Star Online. It still is possible to play them online. As you see on the back, you've got your power connector, you've got your serial port, which I never used, and the AV out. Interesting thing about the AV out is, though, that it not only did component, it did composite, it did coaxial, it also did RGB, and it also supported VGA. You had to buy a separate box, which are getting quite pricey these days, and you could plug it into your PC monitor and get 640 by 480 resolution and really crisp high-res VGA. Looks very, very nice. Unfortunately, a lot of the 240p games do come out a little bit blocky because obviously the extra resolution, but if you've got a VGA box, it's the way to do it. The other thing with the VGAs, a lot of them came with composite connectors, and they also came with S-Video connectors. So if you can get hold of VGA box, well worth getting hold. So that's the UK machine. This is the Japanese machine. As you can see, pretty much identical. On the back, everything exactly the same, except for it's got an orange swirl on the top. Thing with these is because they run on 110 voltage, if you plug that into a UK power supply, you'll blow the power board on the inside, possibly damage the machine. Unfortunately, this one was plugged in. It wasn't me who did it, but this one was plugged in and blew the power board, popped some of the capacitors on it. I could have fixed it, but I didn't bother. About 10 years ago, someone brought me a broken Dreamcast, in which I stripped for parts, and I kept the power board for it. I knew it'd come in useful one day, so I put the power board inside this, and works perfect. So if you ever need to swap power boards, you can. Now this one you can plug into our 240 mains and works perfect. The other thing to note with the Dreamcast, all machines are 60Hz compatible. The PAL ones are PAL, but a lot of the games were switchable to 60Hz, which is that is the thing that you know all gamers want. You want 60Hz gaming, you know, especially your retro consoles, and Sega Dreamcast allows you to do it. The joypads themselves look like this. These are very similar to the Sega Saturn analog pads, very similar actually. As you can see, it's got a analog stick here, which is a little bit loose but actually pretty nice. A D-pad, which is not the best on these machines, 4 face buttons, and underneath there's 2 triggers left and right, which have got really nice tension on them. And you know, they're a little bit low, but they're pretty good. You know, they feel quite nice in the hand. So that's the joypads. Also with the joypads, you could get a memory unit for saving games, which pretty much plugged in the bottom like that, or on the top, whichever you went. And they also released these, which is the Dreamcast VMUs. And these are like a little mini console. They use, you know, standard sort of LCD display. But some games, you could upload games to these. You can also save on these as well. But you could upload games to these and actually play little mini games on them. So while it's plugged in, it looks like that. You get a little screen come up. Some used to display bits on games. Used to display pictures. I remember the Shadow Man one was a nightmare. It would dump a picture on your VMU and then it would stay there. But Sonic had a little mini game you could put on it, something to do with the choo-choos. But yeah, you could take them out. You could attach it to your keyring if you wanted to, and you could play little games for it when you're out and about, which is a pretty nifty idea. So say that's the joypads. Lots of accessories were made for the Dreamcast. This is one which can still be found if you look around. What this one gives you allows you to use a keyboard on the Dreamcast. So things like Typing of the Dead, you could use a keyboard on. It also allows you to use joypad, and it allows you to plug PS2 joypads in and Sega Saturn pads. So bargain. You can still pick these up if you look around. So that's a nice little feature. We'll get onto the games now. UK games came in these boxes. You can see they're quite thick. You open them up, you got your game in there, and you open the back end up, you can put your booklets. They're a bit flimsy and they would break quite easily. Like I got ones here where the front was been lost and the back. Say a lot of the fronts would come out. But yeah, all the British games were released on these. You get Tomb Raider, which is quite good, that Tomb Raider actually. Chow Chow Rocket, which was one of the online games. This game is mental in 4 players. It did get a release on the PS2 and it got a release on the iPad as well. Pretty mad puzzle game with rockets and directing your little Chow Chows. As you say, there's the disc. You got the Dream Key in there, which is the browser itself. I seem to have 2 copies of Chow Chow Rocket for some reason. But yeah, you got a Dream Key, which is the browser, which, like I said, you can get. And I also had a browser, which is pretty cool. Japanese games themselves come in these type of cases. They got pretty stunning artwork on the front of them, as most Japanese cases are, and the discs are pretty fantastic as well. As I drop it. But yeah, the Japanese games came like this. Power Stone 2 is a very good game, by the way. Don't know if it's quite as good as the first one. Say Trick Style. The other thing they did, Sega brought out an arcade stick, which looks like this. This has been modded, but basically I've changed the buttons and that, but that's what they look like. What I like about these sticks, they're a pretty nice size, they're not too heavy, and there's a fair gap between the buttons and the arcade sticks. Most modern sticks these days will have the buttons be here and they stick about by here. I like I like the distance between these. You can put your arms out a bit, but yeah, really nice these sticks are. Today they'll set you back roughly 40-50 quid, probably second hand one, maybe boxed if you're lucky. You can fit sandwich buttons and joysticks in them, but they do take a bit of modding. You've got to grind down in between the buttons, and you've got to cut all the plastic out on the inside, and it do take a bit of modding, but it is possible. But these sticks are pretty nice out of the box, even with the the original parts. The original parts are actually pretty decent. So that's the hardware wise. Say Dreamcast, I really rate the machine. Mad thing is, they're still actually making games for this machine now. There's a lot of shmups in there that have come out. Just go to a little quick look. With some of the games, that'll sort of give you an idea how good this machine is. If you look around, there's a venture game. I've got to point out a few games. There's a venture game called Silver, which is pretty good. You've got Skies of Arcadia, which is another classic. You've got Grandia 2, which is one of the best RPGs ever. One of them. Fantastic game. You've got a very strange game called Seaman. I know it sounds dodgy, where you talk to a fish and he talks back to you. God knows what was going on there. There's horror games on the machine. You had a fantastic version of House of the Dead 2 with the Sega gun, which is very good as well. Pity I don't actually have one of them. And there was a Typing of the Dead, which is the same game, which came out in the arcades as well actually, where you got to type to kill them, which is pretty mad. The Virtual Tennis arcade games were converted to this. And the other thing is, pretty much inside the Naomi arcade machine is a Dreamcast board with extra RAM. So a lot of the Naomi games are pretty damn faithful to their originals. There's some classic shoot 'em ups that are on there. Mars Matrix. You had I'm trying to think. You had Ikaruga. There's loads of them. I just can't think of them offhand. Metropolis Street Racer was on there. That was excellent. That was basically the successor to not the successor, the game before the PGR racing games. I think it's the same team as well that went on to make PGR. Dreamcast got some excellent beat-em-ups, things like Dead or Alive 2, which is almost arcade perfect. You got Capcom versus SNK 2. You got Marvel versus Capcom 2, and these are all pretty much perfect to the Naomi versions. So you can play multiplayer on them. What else we got here? There's loads of games. There was Shenmue, which is one of the first open world run round games where you can talk to everyone and they say different things. You had the Power Stone games. You had Sam de Amiga, which is a rhythm game, which is very good as well. Jet Set Radio. You had games like Rez, which has been released on the 360 and the PS3. Crazy Taxi 1 and 2. The Resident Evil games on here. You have the Fantasy Star Online. It's just the Dreamcast library is full of just brilliant games. The Dreamcast still to this day still looks pretty nice, especially if you're running through VGA. A lot of there's a lot of games made after. There's a few games still coming out for the machine, so it's got a bit of bit of a fan following. The fans, they're making games for the machine as well, and they're coming out. Just Dreamcast is an all-round excellent machine that I do definitely rate. These days you can pick a Dreamcast up for about 25 quid, and games go from anything from a couple of £1 upwards, depending where you have. Boot sales are pretty good for Dreamcast stuff. You got the joypads and everything, and I would definitely recommend picking a Dreamcast up. I've kept mine all these years and I wouldn't get rid of it. In fact, I've got 3 of them. My original one is still plugged in over there. Why I've got 3, I don't know, but I ended up with 3 Dreamcasts. But it's just a fantastic machine. Also, there's an amazing version of Soul Calibur on here, which did get converted to the iPad actually. But and that game still looks beautiful today. The Dreamcast have held up pretty well in the 3D. Like a lot of consoles haven't, but Dreamcast is really good. Obviously Sega discontinued it. It could have been something to do with, I don't know. I don't know if they really were in for the hardware. They'd already made their mind up to swap to software, and with their sales apparently sold 10.6 million units in the 3 years that it was out. I don't know what happened to the give up. It could have been something to do with copies were ended up coming on the machine about a year or so after it was into its life. You could copy the GD-ROMs and use a boot disk to get the games running, or later on you didn't even need that, you could copy the GD-ROMs, patch them and they would work. Saying GD-ROMs as well, the discs could hold up, I think it was something like 1.2 gig. They were their own proprietary sort of CD format with extra space. But like most of the games didn't use all that space anyway, so you could copy them, pretty much every game on the machine. They ended up coming up with a copy. But at the end of the day, copies sometimes sell a machine. Look at the PS2 and the PS1. How many did they sell? How many people do you know that played nothing but originals on their machines? But it always is nice to collect the originals over copies, to be honest. But say maybe it was something to do with that. The machine got hacked and they give up. But I think they'd already made the choice to move to software and away from hardware. So that's the Sega Dreamcast. I would definitely recommend picking one of these up if you can. Got some excellent games and they still look nice now. Some of the games got converted to PC, some actually on the PS2 as well. But yeah, definitely recommend the Dreamcast. It's a very good console. I am looking forward to some of the newer games that are coming out for it. So I think we'll leave it at that. That's short and sweet. But yeah, Sega Dreamcast, very good. Have a look of one or two of my other videos. I'm sure I did one or two videos on Sega Dreamcast, and in the future I'll do some of the games that are out. So anyway guys, leave it there. Sega Dreamcast, thumbs up. And I hope one day Sega will go back into the console market, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. But anyway, there it goes. Right then guys, I'll catch you in the next video.